this is a topic that I previously presented at a law conference, so I do have a bit on what a recommender system actually is, but I presume a lot of people in this room know the answer to that, so I'll go through that quite quickly as the starting point. With that. So I guess in the context of this room, recommender systems are everywhere, and this is something to really think about. They're on Netflix, on Amazon. They're the systems that basically recommend new products for you to buy, new films for you to watch, new music to listen to on Spotify. They're on basically all of the major sites, and they're ubiquitous. And because they're ubiquitous, that means that they have a huge influence on our lives. They're having a huge influence on the different decisions that we're making, as I said, the movies we watch, the music we listen to, but also the news we get, the politics we follow, these sorts of questions. So I became interested in this topic about a year ago when Instagram changed its algorithm to preference Reels and video content over other forms of content. And there was a huge backlash to that, even though engagement went up. So what you had on the one hand was engagement going up, and on the other hand, users saying that they didn't like this new system. So it seemed like people were getting more of what they wanted, but at the same time feeling less happy with what they were getting. So that's sort of where this research is placed and where I come to the topic from. My co-author works in law and philosophy, and so we sort of explored it from that angle a little bit as well. So the tech companies tell us that recommender systems are giving us what we want. They're giving you a new movie that you want to watch. They're giving you a new song that you want to listen to. And they're built in the following way that you probably all know. Explicit data where you put in a review or you put in some feedback or you say, this is actually what I would like to watch, and you tell the system the category that you're interested in. And implicit data, what you click on, how long you spend on a page, these sorts of criteria. And also there's some systems that work on similar users. So what users like you have looked at the past and what have they bought in the past. And the promise of these systems really is that they'll give you what you want that you don't yet know that you want. So there's a new movie out by your favorite director, you don't know it's out, and the system pops up and shows you the movie and you're like, great, this is exactly what I'm looking for. There are problems with this, however. So Harry Frankfurt, who's a famous philosopher, he creates a distinction between what we want on the one hand and what we want to want on the other. So you'll have to follow me here. What we want is our initial urges. So you really want that hamburger from McDonald's. What you want to want is a salad with great vegetables. And so he makes this distinction between these first-order desires, which is what we immediately are looking for, the things that engage us, and the second-order desires, which are basically who you want to be as a person. So maybe, for film, you find action movies really engaging, but you really wish that you would watch a new educational movie, and you wish you were the type of person who would do that. And so it's basically second-order desires are the things that bring us to our better angels and give us agency over our lives by letting us control our desires in some capacity. So there's a lot to say about that as a concept, but one way of easily distinguishing it is with this artwork, which was in Times Square way back in 1982, where Jenny Holzer put up this work that said, "Protect me from what I want." Now, this is a really interesting phrase to think about in the context of modern technology, because all of the tech companies are saying, we're giving you what you want all of the time. What does it mean to think about protect me from what I want? And what does it mean when we actually don't want the thing that we ostensibly want? An easy way to think about this, and the one way Frankfurt takes it, is to think about a drug addict. So a drug addict wants a drug, but they also want to be protected from it at the same time. The reluctant drug addict is someone who's trapped in addiction but doesn't want to be addicted. And a lot of social media users describe themselves in exactly the same way, that they go on a platform, they use it for hours, but they don't actually want to use the content. They find it highly engaging, but they don't actually like it. So they're trapped in a sort of similar drug addict paradigm. The tech companies, again, like to frame the recommender systems as helpful technology because the world today is complicated. We have millions of news articles, millions of songs, millions of films. No one could possibly choose for themselves. That's the argument. And so they'll choose for us, essentially, by using algorithms based on our user preferences to develop profiles and make those decisions. When you go out and survey people, so Engelman and others looked at this, users of social media trust the algorithm. They say that 78% of the users that they surveyed said that the algorithm could make accurate and correct judgments about them in general. A majority said that the algorithm knows what's valuable to them, reflects who they are, accurately infers their interests, and so on. So users trust that the algorithm is doing this process correctly, that it's giving them what they want in some sense, or it knows what they want in some sense. When we look at what makes a user trust a recommender system, transparency is one thing, but we can add other criteria such as the prevention of harm and the fairness of the system. So Eric Schmidt, who's the co-founder of Google, he looked at what the home of the future might look like. And the home of the future is filled with recommender systems. So I'll read out the description and follow along and see what you think about this. With simple flicks of the wrist and spoken instructions, you can control temperature, humidity, ambient music, and lighting, while a freshly cleaned suit is retrieved from your automated closet because your calendar indicates an important meeting today. Your computer system suggests a list of chores your housekeeping robot should tackle today, all of which you approve. There's a bit of time left before you need to leave for work, which you'll get to by driverless car, of course. Your car knows what time you need to be in the office. Each morning, based on your calendar, it communicates with your wristwatch to give you a 60-minute countdown. Okay, so all of this stuff is happening in your house, and this is the future that's being imagined. And it's sort of a techno-optimist idea of recommender systems, where new technology can augment life to create lifestyle, if you like. But if you think more closely about that, a different picture emerges. The freshly cleaned suit that's delivered to you was delivered without your choice on which suit to wear. The chores are agreed to without objection. The car signals your wristwatch without consent, setting up a timer which you didn't consent to, and you must comply with that timer to get to work on time. And so there's a sense, Eric Schmidt presents this as you are conducting the technology in your home, but there's also a sense that the technology in your home is kind of conducting you. It's telling you, you have to do this now, you have to do this now, and it's controlling sort of different aspects of your life. So what would a responsible recommender system look like that actually adhered to the ideas of autonomy that Frankfurt was talking about? So a lot of this is about ensuring autonomy. So where a lot of systems will trap you into a feedback loop, where you're trapped in a cycle of getting recommended the same things, clicking on the same sort of actions. Maybe at one point you liked action movies, and now all you're seeing is action movies. So you're sort of in this force-fed feedback cycle, but at no point do you get the chance to correct the system in quite an antagonistic way and say, no, I actually don't like any of this anymore. I'm a completely different person. I've changed, and so on. And this is the big difference of recommender systems compared to traditional recommendations. So you might think, well, recommender systems, they're just the new kind of recommendation. Our friends used to give us recommendations. Our colleagues used to give us recommendations in the office. You should watch this. You should buy this. Like, that's the common form. But what's changed now is that these systems reinforce what we already said we wanted in the past, and they sort of trap you in time. And so one way of escaping that would be to allow, there are many options. Allowing people to opt out is one option, allowing people to assert that they're no longer interested in something, or having different profiles that you could adopt. I had a colleague who switched phones with their partner just to be in a different world, so to speak, on these apps and applications. And I think it's really interesting to think about that, what it means when our worlds are being shaped in such a way that switching phones with someone feels like an entirely new world. Yeah, so I'll stop there and I'll give room for questions.
Thank you. Yes, there's one question in the room there.
So just a body of work to point out, Elad Liebman from Learning Agents Research Group, Peter Stone student, he did a PhD on recommender systems for music. There's like a whole, I think Pandora funds a bunch of research in the area. And in reinforcement learning, there's the so-called exploration trade-off, right? Like, are you exploiting the output of the model, or are you exploring new space to see if new decisions would be better? I wonder if you have thoughts about how that kind of figures into this last slide, where you have these different regimes that you're in, but you could always just have Netflix be like, tonight I need a documentary, right, or something like that, and give you some I think the systems actually already do that to some degree, right? I know Spotify is horrible for it, but I do think that other recommendations have I'm going to throw something random in there. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of research on that, the randomness factor, and giving users something new and something different. From what I've seen, the trend is away from that, but there are some systems in place that do give you something new, something random to look at. The problem is that they're, again, looking at how quickly you engage with that new option. And if you don't engage, they probably won't recommend it to you again. Yeah, so I think to some extent, just the incentive is so heavily skewed towards engagement that sort of biases things as well, because you might be interested in a topic that you only want to look at once every 2 months or something, feasibly, but that wouldn't cater into the system.
Great. There's a question on Slido. It says, it's just moved up to the top, so see where it's gone. For us to choose what we want to want, would it help us to have a recommender system for recommender systems?
Yeah, probably. I think one of the things that I saw in the research is that to choose what you want to want, you need time for rest and contemplation. And to a large extent, the big tech companies are pushing the attention economy and modes of addiction that keep you so engaged that it's really hard to step back and think, what do I actually want in this situation? So that's another thing to think about, that it's actually it's a slightly different choice. It's not just what do I want to watch right now, it's what do I want to do with my time in this moment, or who do I want to be as a person in the future? It's a much bigger question, yeah.
Okay, is there another one in the room over there?
Thanks. I think it's quite dystopian that, as far as that slide was concerned, that the future is to become a Google house is just a white American man from the 1950s, apparently, which is ironic because Netflix continually advertises to me the show Mad Men, which I've tried to watch and can't stand it. But I guess where I'm coming from is I'm wondering whether actually, perhaps cheekily, we've just been trapped in a sort of Mad Men-esque, recommender system, but designed by and for a particular cohort of people through conventional advertising and conventional marketing. And perhaps what we're now seeing with autonomous systems is that we can all get our own personalized set of Mad Men. So I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts on this, on that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if it's probably one of the strongest counter-arguments that I agree with, in the sense that we're each being given our own little world rather than having the mass media world of the past. And Netflix and different companies are able to cater to diverse audiences much more in a niche fashion because of that. So that's a big advantage. The problem with that is that we're then cut off from other people's worlds more abruptly. So they did a study in the US where they showed that white people weren't being shown that police were, having racially motivated killings on their newsfeed on Facebook. So we're living in worlds where things are happening in our communities that we're not aware of because we're living in these bubbles. And yeah, I mean, Eric Schmidt's home of the future might be Mad Men-esque, but we might have a different home of the future, which is unique to us, but still not representative of the broader community that we're a part of, just unique to us as individuals. And that's also a problem in some sense. We need to have access to information beyond just our immediate personal identity alone. We also need to understand what's happening in the community, in the world, particularly on news feeds. The news feed one is very strange because it's news catered to you as an individual rather than the news in a big sense.
There's been quite a few questions on Slido, so I'm just going to ask one more. How much work has been done on how people's interpretation of recommendations changes over time? Do you think recommendation has been domesticated?
Domesticated? I'm not sure what that means. I think in terms of how people's opinions have changed over time on recommendations, there's a lot of evidence that when people use a system for a lot longer, they start to get frustrated with the types of recommendations they get. Amazon gets the most complaints with this. If you basically buy anything from Amazon, they'll start recommending you to buy the exact same thing you just bought. I think a lot of people have experienced that. And in the research, there's a lot of complaints that users have about that type of behavior. So even in terms of engagement, giving you something that you already have or have already engaged with that you don't want to see again, there are those sorts of problems as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.